Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a closer look at India's really remarkable socioeconomic transformation over the past decade or so.
That's right.
Our mission, to give you a concise understanding of how targeted government initiatives, powered by technology and pretty significant public investment, have genuinely improved the lives of millions.
And the scale and speed are quite something.
Exactly. We're talking progress that's almost unprecedented in some ways.
A crucial aspect here, though, is India's ongoing challenge. How do you sustain strong economic growth and make sure the benefits reach everyone, especially across such a huge, diverse population?
Right.
So this deep dive, it'll really focus on those tangible, positive impacts across key sectors.
Oh.
We'll give you a data-backed overview of how they're trying to manage that balance.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
One of the biggest areas, I think, has to be financial inclusion.
Definitely.
Think about the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojana, PMJDY. It helped open, over 550 million bank accounts by early 2025.
A massive number.
Yeah.
A 3.6-fold increase.
And what seems really transformative is how that jam trinity, the Jan Dhan accounts, Aadhaar identity, and mobile connectivity, how that enabled these transparent direct benefit transfers.
Yes, the DBT system.
That move alone, the estimates suggest, saved around $42 billion just by cutting down leakages.
Which is substantial. But while that scale is impressive, it does raise, an important question about real use and sustainability.
How so?
Well, around 110 million of those PMJDY accounts were reported inactive by late 2024. This sort of signals a need for maybe deeper financial literacy efforts and sustained engagement. It's about moving beyond just opening an account to actually empowering people to use it effectively.
That's a crucial point, yeah. Fostering that continued engagement.
Yeah.
So building on financial security, this focus on citizen well-being also pushed hard into healthcare with Ayushman Bharat PMJAY, launched back in 2018.
The health insurance scheme.
Right, providing free health coverage up to about $6,000 per family per year. Nearly 400 million Ayushman cards issued.
And facilitating over 89 million hospital admissions. It represents a substantial safety net, no doubt.
It does sound like it.
Yet there's a complexity. Despite these big numbers, the average claim settlement is often less than $120.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that can fall quite short of actual hospital costs. For instance, a survey in Bengaluru found average expenses were closer to $950.
Right, so there's still a gap.
Exactly. It can still mean significant out-of-pocket costs or borrowing for families. It highlights that difference between policy intent and sometimes the financial reality on the ground.
Okay, so stepping back, what does this all mean for overall social protection?
Well, the coverage, according to ILO data, it nearly doubled, went from about 24% to almost 49% by 2024.
Wow, nearly half the population covered in some way.
And this is seen as a direct contributor to that figure of nearly 250 million people escaping multidimensional poverty.
A huge impact.
But there's also a significant systemic challenge worth noting. Many welfare programs still relied heavily on the 2011 census data for their budgeting and targeting.
That's over a decade old now.
Precisely. It creates information gaps, potentially compromising accurate targeting until the new census data comes through, maybe around 2027.
So resources might not always be perfectly aligned with current needs.
That's the risk, yes. An urgent need for up-to-date information there.
Okay. Building on social protection, there was also this massive infrastructure push, right? Recognizing physical connectivity is vital.
Absolutely critical. PMJDY Shakti, the National Master Plan for Infrastructure.
That led to a 2.8-fold increase in the pace of national highway construction?
Yes, and it helped improve India's World Bank Logistics Performance Index ranking, too, up 6 places.
That's a tangible result.
And it's a really comprehensive drive. You see it in rural roads, achieving 99% rural habitation connectivity with hundreds of thousands of kilometers of new roads.
Huge for rural access.
You see it in ports, where modernization nearly halved the turnaround time for ships. And in cities, with Metro Rail expanding from just 5 cities to 23.
Nearly 1,000 kilometers of metro lines now.
And there's a unique social angle in housing, too. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana mandates female ownership or co-ownership of the homes built under the scheme.
That's interesting, embedding empowerment right into the infrastructure policy.
Exactly.
Now, shifting to something really fundamental, sanitation. The Swachh Bharat Mission, SBM, that felt like a game changer.
It certainly had a high profile and ambitious goals.
Over 100 million household toilets built. They declared 100% rural sanitation coverage by 2019. That met a UN Sustainable Development Goal years ahead of schedule.
11 years early, yes. And the health impact estimate from the WHO is significant, potentially 300,000 diarrheal deaths avoided.
That's incredible.
However, there's a critical nuance here, too. Despite those official declarations, some reports, they do indicate that open defecation persists in certain rural areas.
Why is that?
Often due to issues like a lack of reliable piped water for the toilets, or sometimes lingering behavioral habits or misconceptions.
So infrastructure alone isn't always enough.
It highlights that need for sustained effort, beyond just construction, focusing on long-term behavior change and supporting infrastructure like water supply.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of water, the Jal Jeevan Mission has been huge too, right?
Absolutely. A massive push for tap water access in rural homes. It surged from just under 17% to over 80% by March 2025.
Over 80%.
The human impact there is just profound. The WHO projects this saves over 55 million hours every day, time mostly spent by women fetching water.
55 million hours a day.
And potentially prevents up to 400,000 deaths annually from waterborne diarrheal diseases.
So health, time-saving, dignity, it touches so many areas.
Indeed. And sort of underpinning much of this progress has been India's digital transformation.
Right, the whole digital India push.
The country is now positioned as the world's third largest digitalized economy. Internet connections just exploded from around 250 million to almost 1 billion.
Wow.
And that obviously enhances transparency, efficiency, and governance.
Makes things like those direct benefit transfers possible.
Exactly. And this digital drive, it demonstrably fosters economic growth, entrepreneurship too, supporting that shift from job seekers to potentially job givers via things like Startup India.
But there must be challenges there too.
Oh, absolutely. Key challenges remain. Digital illiteracy is one, only about a quarter of young people aged 15-24 have basic digital skills, according to some reports.
That's a big gap.
And the environmental side, a huge increase, 72% in electronic waste. That needs managing.
Okay, so quite a complex picture. To sort of summarize then, India's last decade of these targeted initiatives, it really shows a monumental scale of ambition.
It does.
And some genuinely profound positive impacts across the country.
Indeed. And that digital public infrastructure, it really has been a common enabling thread through so much of this progress.
A key factor.
But, sustained success will likely depend on tackling those ongoing challenges. We mentioned user engagement, making sure the data is accurate and current, fostering those long-term behavioral shifts. That's key for truly inclusive and sustainable development.
Absolutely. So perhaps a final thought for you, our listener. What does India's decade of these transformative initiatives tell us about the sheer power of targeted policy combined with digital integration for driving societal change? And maybe how might these lessons apply or not apply to other nations facing similar development goals? Something to think about.